Hello everybody, we are back for day 12 of WordPress for Designers on blog.themeforest.net, and we're moving right along with our PSD. Today we're going to focus on slicing and pulling out the images that we're going to need. We're going to talk about why we don't need certain aspects of our PSD, and how we're going to make it kind of all fit together to work with WordPress, and get the images ready to jump straight into WordPress. Thanks to all of you who answered the questions that I asked. In day 11 I asked if we should, if you guys would feel more comfortable slicing and then going into an HTML theme and then going into WordPress, or if you guys would feel more comfortable slicing today and then day 13 we will just go straight into WordPress and start putting the HTML and the CSS structure together. So the feedback seemed like it was 75% or more for going straight into WordPress, and I think that's probably a better idea because there are a lot of good tutorials out there, especially on NetTuts, which I will link to, that have more about slicing a PSD and going into an HTML and stuff. So today we are going to look at the important elements of our PSD that we need, slice them, get them out of there, talk about a few things, and jump straight into WordPress next time. So open up Photoshop here. That's what I'm going to be using. I'm sure that's the software most of us are on. I guess you could use GIMP if you don't have Photoshop, or you can't get it or whatever. So let's just kind of take this at the home page now, and firstly I have the background gradient hidden, as I don't want it to kind of interfere with anything that we're going to be slicing yet, and we'll grab that some point later. But the first thing I want to do is grab the background from here. So let's zoom in just a little bit, and if my computer runs a little slow here, like I said, Photoshop tends to run a little slow, especially when I have screencast software running, so apologies in advance. But for the background, there's a little bit of noise going on in this blue we have, and in day 11 we discussed that all we need is a little chunk. So I'm going to just kind of take a chunk here. Okay, and that should do it. And what I'm going to do is right click. I'm going to say Edit Slice Options, and I'm going to name it Background, and I'll hit OK. And the next thing I'm going to do is, we don't need the logo, I don't think, right now. We're going to try it with just HTML and CSS. We'll mess around with the typography and the letter spacing and some of the font weights, and I think we can get it looking pretty nice with just pure text, which would be a bonus. Don't have to use any extra images here. So the navigation, obviously it's just text, so we don't have to worry about the actual font. And the little border here, all we need to know is the color, which we'll find out if we just use the eyedropper, and we can just use the border property in CSS, and we will cover that when we hit our CSS. So what's kind of nice about this theme is we're really not going to need that many images. So moving right along, we come to the big featured section, which I want to discuss a little more, and I know I touched on day 11. We are going to do a slider. It's going to be cool. It's kind of a nice way to have a lot of content in a smaller area, so we will cover the slider. But at first we talked about slicing off like the top, the middle, and then the bottom, and kind of using that to have a dynamic height. And I was going to do that, but before I did this I realized that Jeffrey used the same PSD and sliced it into just an HTML template to kind of show everybody how you would do that, and I will link to that because it's a great tutorial screencast. But he made the point that in the way this design is set up and the way the content is made, we don't really need, this isn't really made to be a dynamic height, especially when you look at some of the texture and how it's just a snippet and it's meant to be a slider. So this would work a lot better if it actually was just a set height, and that'll make things a lot easier for us because we're just going to be, since we're working with WordPress, we're just going to be taking out some of the snippets here from a blog post category. So it's not like we're going to have a whole ton of content to scroll through here. That's not what this kind of design is all about anyway. So that's great, though. That's going to make this even easier. It just means just, you know, a lot less, you know, we'll just take one image here instead of having to worry about slicing all three of them and then putting them together with different divs and whatnot. So if I scroll down to the home folder here and I kind of drop it down to see its children, and I go to the featured, which is already dropped down, I'm going to hide the pagination, which are the buttons. I'm going to hide the featured content, and I'm just going to slice this and make sure I get the drop shadow, and we're going to just keep the blue in the background because I don't believe, I think it'll look okay with the repeating chunk that we have here. If it doesn't, we can always come back and make a ping, but it should be okay if we just leave a little bit of blue in the background. And we just want to make sure that we get all of that drop shadow that's there, so because it has a nice little outer drop shadow on all the borders here. So that looks good, and we will right click on this and say edit slice options, and we'll call this featured underscore BG for background. Featured background. We'll hit OK. Now I'm going to come back to this and we're going to slice out a few more things from the slider that we need. But let's move down to the footer since we're kind of covering all the non-transparent items right now. We're going to come back to the content as well, but for now just come down to the footer. And we are going to open up the footer and we're going to hide any of the text. Obviously we can do all of this with, we don't need any images in here, that's all text anyway. Whoops. And again, this footer is obviously not going to be a dynamic height, so we can just take the whole thing. And again, there is a slight outer glow to it, so we want to make sure we get that. And yep, that looks like a good slice. I'm going to bring it down a little bit here. Not that much. Oh, come on. Okay, well that looks good. And we're going to right click and we'll just save this as footer underscore background, or BG for background. Okay, so now we have kind of the background here, we have our featured section, and we have our footer. Let's go ahead and just to show you how we can get these out of our slices, we can click Save for Web and Devices. Okay, and we can save them, I'm going to save them at like 75 quality. Should be nice. And we're going to click on Save. And now the thing to note is we don't want, it might be by default set on all slices, and that would slice all these different, you know, slices that occurred because of the slices we made. And we only want the three that we've made so far, the background, the featured section, and the footer. So if we go to slices, we can select all user slices, and now see how it says save as layout. That would be like a default name if we didn't already name them, but this isn't really relevant since we've already right clicked and named our slices that we've made so far. So let's click save. Okay, that's done. If I go to my desktop here and then I go to images, okay, you see we have background, featured background, and footer background. It's perfect. It's what we wanted. So that said, let's go ahead and clear our slices. Of course, you can do a lot more than this all at once. I'm just kind of trying to take it slow and chunk at a time here for everybody. Go ahead and kind of revert things back to where they were in the footer. And now let's go to the featured section again, which is kind of a big area for us. And let's turn on the pagination and the content. Okay, now if we zoom in, we can see that we have these little buttons here, and obviously we can just do text, but we're going to need the buttons for the background, and especially this little you know, arrow circle icon here. So we're going to want to just carefully slice that out of here and make sure we don't cut it off at all. My Photoshop skills aren't great, so I'll try to do my best. Leave it up to the designers of you out there. Okay, and I think that's good. I don't think I'm cutting anything off. Oh, I had it, but I had to mess with it. Let me just expand that a little bit. There we go. Okay. We'll right click, we'll hit Edit Slice Options, and we'll just call this circle arrow off the top of my head. I don't know. We can rename that if we like. I think that's pretty descriptive. Okay, and let's just go ahead and just save that. Again, we'll click Save. All user slices, and we should have it in our images again. Circle arrow. Nice. Okay. So now what we need is the buttons. So again, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to clear the slices, and we want to get just one of these buttons so we can put some text on them, and they're both the same width. So we would go down to Featured, Pagination, and we can just kind of mess around here to try to hide all this stuff. There we go, and we're just going to carefully slice one of these buttons here, taking as little of the background from them as we can. Of course, you know, you've seen my slice skills are a little subpar, so bear with me. Okay, it looks like I got enough of that. Right click, Edit Slice Options. We'll call it slider underscore button, in case we have another button. We don't want to just name it button. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save that for web and devices. Save all user slices, and now we will have that. And again, we'll clear our slices and zoom out. Let's revert everything so we don't forget about it. Okay. And of course we'll take this image out. That's kind of a no-brainer, that's just a little square. But I want to touch on the transparency here, because that's what we're going to have to do for a few of the elements, at least on this airplane right now. So we can see in the content area that we can do all of this text with HTML and CSS, and that should be pretty easy. And we can also do the 3 columns. There's no real special images here, so we don't have to worry about that. But this little airplane here, it's got like some weird shadows and shapes to it, and if we could try to just get all the blue here, but it just, with that much blue in the background, it might not work out with our repeating background that we have going. So we're just going to save it as a transparent ping, and then we'll just apply a fix to it for IE. So the first thing that we want to do is come down to main content, which is where all of this is located in. We're going to hide the excerpt here, and what I'm going to do is just slice around the paper airplane, and that looks pretty good. I'm surprised I got it on the first try. I'm sure you all are surprised too. And now we need to make sure it's transparent. So I need to hide the background, and I need to hide the other background. And I know it's hard to see now, which is why I sliced it when we still had the background visible. And we'll just right click, Edit Slice Options, and we're going to name this Plane. Hit OK. Save for web and devices. Save all user slices. Good. Save it, and we're done. So that was pretty simple for the transparency, and let's turn back on the background here. Okay, so that covers all of our elements, I believe, besides this image, which we'll just take from our home page. Yep, I think that's it. Okay, so now we need to move on. We have a few more pages I want to look at, and I won't take you guys through every single mundane page, but I do want to talk about a few more elements of our layout here. So if we hide the home page and we just go to like a static page, like an about page, we can see we kind of have the same thing going, except now we have a sidebar thing we need to grab, a little arrow, and a dark arrow maybe. And we already have our plane, so we'll be able to position that, but we need to take out one of these smaller, featured kind of about us background pages here, which will be on everything but the home page and the blog. And again, I don't think we need a dynamic height here. This is just going to be pulled from what's called a WordPress excerpt, and we're just going to make it real easy for the user to fill in this information from the WordPress admin panel. But it's not going to be a whole lot of info. Like I said, that's just not how the design is meant to be. The rest of the info would fall here, and then any links would be in the sidebar. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to About, and we'll see the featured. If we hide that, you can see everything disappears. So let's start hiding stuff. Let's get rid of the paper plane. Let's get rid of the excerpt copy, and there we go. And we're going to do the same thing as before. We are going to slice this and make sure we get the kind of the outer drop shadow there. Of course, I need to open that up some, and that looks okay. We're going to give it a name, and we'll say, let's say featured page background. And we'll hit OK. Okay, before we save that and export it to our images folder, we know we already have the footer, but let's talk about the sidebar. Now the sidebar, I think we are justified in having a dynamic height because we don't know how many links they're going to have. We just don't, we don't know what is all going to be in the sidebar, and we want to keep it open to the user. Oops, I need to keep those hidden for now. Okay. So let's find the sidebar, which should be in main content, and under sidebar. So yep, okay, that's our sidebar. I was hoping there'd be an easier way to get rid of all of our text so we could kind of take this out, but I might have to just experiment a little here, guys. So apologies about that. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to hide this stuff real quick. Okay, and that last little arrow, did I miss it? Yes. Okay, good. Now what we can do is just take 3 slices, just like so. We're going to take the top, like that. We are going to take a middle section. We're going to make the top a little bit taller here to get some of this gray shadow in. We're going to take just a small little middle section here. Okay. And then we're going to take the bottom. Okay. So now what we can do is, we can click Edit Slice Options, Sidebar Top, click OK. Let me zoom in here. And we can click on the middle one, Edit Slice Options, Sidebar Middle, and again, I want to make sure this stretches out to the, there we go. Edit Slice Options, Sidebar Bottom. Okay, and make sure these are all lined up like so. Perfect. And now we can just go to, now we have our single page background here. We have our 3 slices on our sidebar, and that's all we need from this for this page and for most of the static pages. So save for web and devices. We will have to go back and get those little arrow icons, but we'll take care of that. Save. Make sure you're on all user slices. And click Save, and that's that. So we'll go ahead and clear our slices and kind of show some of these things again. Alrighty. And I actually don't want that little blue background on history because I want one of the light arrows and one of the dark arrows. We just want to make sure we take an arrow, and we don't need it to be transparent as long as we make sure it's on just kind of a, we don't take much of the background, and the background just kind of this white color that we're working with. So I don't think there's any need for us to make these transparent, at least not at the moment. Okay, and see if I can get this how I'd like it. Okay, there's a light arrow, and take a dark arrow here, and a little bit more on the bottom. Okay, a little bit more on the top. Say edit slice options on the dark arrow, and I think that's an appropriate name. Dark arrow. Go down to the light one, edit slice options. Light arrow. Whoops. Okay. And before we save this little blue bar here, I think we're just gonna, I mean, it has barely any rounded corners, and I think instead of saving that as an image, that we'll just use a hover property, and we'll have a little fun with the border radius here. And since it's such a small little curved border, you know, if the border radius isn't supported in that in the user's browser, you know, it'll just default to a square corner, which will barely be noticeable of a difference because of how slightly rounded these corners are. And I think that'll give us a chance to kind of have some fun with some, you know, CSS properties that we don't really get to use very often. So let's hit save for web and devices. Save, make sure you're on all user slices, and that's that. So we'll clear slices. I like to stay organized here in my PSD, so I'm going to make sure I, you know, show everything that I have hidden so far. Yep, I think that's good. Okay. So now let's look at one more page that I want to look at, which is the blog. Okay. You can see we already have most of the stuff we need here. We have the background for the blog. We have this, you know, the sidebar paper stuff, but we're going to need this little go background gradient blue button here. And yeah, that's all we're going to need for the blog. So let's zoom in on the search thing, and under blog we will go to, where is it under? Main content, yep. Sidebar search, and we'll hide go, and then I will just do my best to take just this little button here, and looks like I got it. I'm surprised I got that on the first try. Okay, and we'll just call it a search button. Click OK. Zoom out here. Save for web and devices. You guys know how to do this by now. Click save, and that's it. Okay, so I mean, it's that simple for our blog. Everything else, oops, a little separator here. Yeah, we'll grab that. You'll notice there's this little separator, which is a nice way to use kind of two different colors to give it just a little bit of polish and separate kind of the content from one another. You know, we could probably use a border, but let's go ahead and slice it now in case we need it down the road. And I'm just going to give it a really small slice here. I know it's kind of probably hard for a lot of you to see this, but I got it. And right click, edit slice options, and we will save this as you know, blog separator. Okay, clear slices. And lastly, we need to take a look at the contact page. Okay, notice the contact form. We're going to need the send button and one of these input boxes, or what will be an input box, and the text area box. So to finish off our day, we will grab those. So let's drop down the content area here and zoom in. And I don't think we need any transparency here, as long as we don't grab much of the blue background. And remember, we only need one of these input areas because they're all going to be the same. So Looks good. Edit slice options, and we'll name this, you know, contact input. We'll come down to the text area, and we'll give it a little slice there. Edit slice options, and we'll say text area background. Feel free to name these whatever you like. Just kind of trying to stay descriptive here. And now we need to hide this little send text, as we'll put that over ourselves in the HTML markup. So let's see, where is that? In the contact, main content, there it is. Send. And you gotta have hats off to Jeffrey here for how well this PSD is organized. I mean, everything is just in relevant groups. Just a really nice job. So let's do this. Unfortunately, I think it's snapping. I want to have a little more control here. There we go. Okay, and edit slice options. And contact send. Hit OK, and we'll kind of zoom out to see what we got here. Whoops. And now we covered our input areas, our text area, our send button. We have our sidebar, we have our featured, we have our background. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to grab our gradient. So we'll save. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is try to grab that gradient, which is going to be a little tricky, and it's definitely going to be transparent here. So what we're going to, let me get some of my groups back here. Okay, if I hide the contact and I show the gradient, you can see it kind of is all the way to the top here. It kind of fizzles out over here where my cursor is, and it kind of bottoms out, around here. So what we're going to do is we're going to slice it where we can see it right now, which is, we'll start at the top, and it doesn't extend. We can get away with, taking it right about it close to the 1-inch margin. And we're just going to give it a big slice here, come over here, take it about to 13, and drop down a little more, and just kind of eyeball it, and just see, grab most of that gradient. And remember, it's going to be transparent here, so it won't be that big of a deal if we mess up a little bit, but that looks pretty good. I think I got most of it. And the margins on both sides look accurate, so that's good. And now what we're going to do is hide the background blue layer and hide the white background. Now, I know you can't see this. I can barely see it, but there is a slight gradient here, which when we overlay onto our blue background that's repeating, will look really nice. And we'll just apply a nice little fix to it for IE6 and any other browsers that may not support transparency, transparent pings. But that is time for another day. So we will go ahead and name this, and we will say BG for background, gradient. And OK. Hit save for web and devices. And we want to save this as a PNG 24 and save all user slices. Hopefully that came out okay. That looked a little strange in the preview here. Let's see, background gradient. Let's open that real quick with preview. Give that 1 second to load here. Yeah, okay, and you can see it did exactly what we wanted. There's barely a gradient here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it worked as we wanted it to, and it's now transparent. So let me unhide everything. We'll clear our slices, and we are one step closer to moving into WordPress. Next day, day 13, as soon as we get to it, we are just going to start. We'll probably just start with the home page. This page right here, we are going to dive straight into WordPress code and we are going to get this theme up and rocking. And I think it's going to be, quite an awesome WordPress theme when it's done, and hopefully we'll all learn a lot from it when this series is over. So stay tuned, guys. Like I said, next time we will be taking this straight into WordPress. So if you're enjoying this, I urge you to subscribe to our RSS feed over to the left. Any comments or suggestions you guys have, we're very open to, so let me know. Happy WordPress coding, everybody, and have a great day.